Council of Princeton, November 28th, 2022. And we'll start with the meeting statement.
Adequate notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, including the time, date, and location of the meeting. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please? I'm sorry. Leighton, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I will read the land acknowledgement.
Okay.
It reads as follows. We gather today on the land of the Lenni Lenape. As members of the Princeton community, we aspire to show appreciation, respect, and concern for all peoples and our environment. We honor the Lenape and other indigenous caretakers of these lands and waters, the elders who lived here before, the indigenous today, and the generations to come.
Thank you, Leighton. Roll call.
Ms. Perrone-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Fraga?
Here.
Ms. Sachs?
Here.
Mr. Newland?
Here.
Mayor Frida.
Here. If we could all stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, the flag's behind me. Sorry, it moved. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Our next meeting, we'll see where the flag is. Movable flags. All right. We have 9 sets of minutes, and before we get a motion on those, I would just like to comment, it is amazing to me that we are so up to date with the minutes, and that's a heck of a lot of work, so really
Thank you.
appreciate that.
We worked hard.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So,
I need to abstain for the set of October 24th minutes.
the 24th?
It's
Okay.
not present.
Okay. Would someone like to, is there anyone that needs to abstain on any others? No? Okay. Would someone move all the other minutes except for number 7? And then we'll, okay. Leticia and then Mia's got the second. All in favor of 1 through 6 and 8 and 9 on the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And would someone move number 7, the October 24th minutes? Thank you, David. Eve's got the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? Michelle abstains. Okay. Hey, Adam, in the back, is there a way to bring up that I can see on the screen what the council? I just cheat and look at the screen in front of me to see who's raising their hands to make motions and second them. Sorry? Yeah, on the screen, can we just have the picture of the council? No, he said it's on, we're live. Okay. It's just that we're not showing it on here, on these screens in front of us, which usually we do. That's why I went the second time over and asked the questions. Okay. Right, because we can see the attendees now. Okay, terrific, thank you so much. So now we're going to do announcements and reports. Council members with announcements or reports. Eve?
I like the way you did that without looking at me. Thank you, Adam, for putting that up. I have a couple of things I wanted to mention. First, reminder that the gas leaf blower seasonal restrictions begin again on December 16th. And I checked in today with our compliance officer, and her opinion is that there have been pretty good compliance. She's been giving 20 to 30 notices a month, mostly to property owners rather than landscapers. And her observation, and that of many people who have spoken to me or commented, is that Princeton is indeed quieter. And of course, we know there are ancillary benefits, not just the quiet, but reduction in air pollution, and for people who are using them, health benefits as well. So, yeah, so that will kick in again on the 16th of next month until mid-March again. And I wanted to also say that the Princeton Public Library, along with SPIA, which is Princeton University School of Public and International Affairs, and the National Endowment for the Humanities is sponsoring a Housing Justice Forum on December 10th, 11 to 3, in a hybrid format. If you come, you get free lunch, but you can also join online. I checked before I came over here. There are about 40 spots available for in-person registrants, and I think this is going to be a great discussion of a very important topic. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Eve. Other council members with reports or announcements? Okay, great. Isaac, you are next.
Good evening, Your Honor. I'm pleased to be back here again tonight, and I'm going to provide a quick update on the work of the Princeton Business Partnership. And really behind this, Mr. Mayor, is how much we value having this two-way communication and really being transparent, both with the governing body and with the public about the hard work that we're doing. So with that, within the past week, some of the things our team's been working on are logo selection and refinement process. We're very excited on our progress. We look forward to sharing that soon. We assisted with the Hamilton Home ribbon cutting last Tuesday, and a special thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, also to Councilmember Perrone for being present for that. Councilmember Sachs, I believe, was present for that as well. So
As was Eve.
As was Eve. You remind me. Thank you very much. I should just thank the whole council.
Yeah, play it safe.
So with that, we also were very pleased to organize the Small Business Saturday promotion last Saturday, and we were very pleased to host the Small Business Development Center Director Lillian Morrow, who spent several hours with us and visited more than 24 businesses, connecting them with the valuable resources SBDC provides. We're pleased to have the holiday decorations up, especially along Witherspoon and Nassau Street. The garland of lights and bows went up miraculously last Friday. Very happy to see that. And finally, several business openings. We were so pleased to welcome Johnny Was, a clothier, Maman, a wonderful bakery and cafe, both in Palmer Square, Hamilton Home, as I mentioned, on Witherspoon Street, and Mr. T on Nassau Street. So what do we have coming up in the next month? Well, we're continuing to work on that logo process. I'm very pleased that we're working on some plantings and planters on Nassau Street, especially where we've lost some of the trees through the years, just so we have a little something, a little bit of green there. And I hear we're going to make it sustainable, which is very exciting. We're also contemplating a restaurant week for 2023. And looking at allowable uses and how we can work with the governing body to update those so we can reflect the types of businesses that really would like to be in a community like Princeton. So lastly, one big item that I want all of you to know about is that the e-blast, which we've developed, went out last month to over 1,000 addresses. The one that's going out tomorrow morning will reach 2,175 addresses. So you can see how we've grown our list in the last month. And we're particularly excited to share with the public and with all of our members about the Master Plan Open House, which I know you'll hear about tonight, but we want to do our part to help get the word out about that. With that, that's my report.
Isaac, thank you very much for that. And then any council members with any questions or anything for Isaac? David?
I'd just like to ask if you know in what way the plantings on Nassau Street will be sustainable.
Well, I don't want to give away the whole secret, but we are working with our friends with Sustainable Princeton on that. So you can think in terms of the types of plants that are put in, how we approach things like irrigation, even the soil composition and how you amend that. But I fear that I've given all of my best secrets away already. But we're very pleased to be working again with our friends and partner with Sustainable Princeton on that.
These are the kinds of things we don't like to keep secret.
Oh, excellent.
We want everybody to know.
Thank you for that education, council member. I'll take a note.
Michelle?
I just want to thank you, Isaac, and I want to mention that, you know, this will be a monthly report. It's really important. It's called the Princeton Business Partnership because it is a partnership between the business community and the governing body and staff. So it's really important that the municipality and the business communities have this open dialogue. So I'm really glad that you've taken the initiative to start these conversations.
Thank you. And as I've shared with you, Your Honor, as long as you keep inviting me back, I'll continue to show up. Thank you.
We
I
appreciate
actually
that.
have
Sorry?
another
Yeah,
question.
Leticia?
And thank you for your report. I'm very excited about all the new merchants that are coming and new locations. But I was wondering whether there's any plan to expand, to bring it out more this side of on Witherspoon Street, whether on the business district, to bring new businesses this way as well. And the second question, and Michelle, might be separate regarding the holiday trees. Is that happening again this year?
No, the PBP, Princeton Business Partnership, opted to do decorations that were uniform this year.
Okay.
So we're not doing that decorating.
And I only ask it because I know that there were some of our merchants that were on this side of, further down this way, that were interested in participating in that, in the holiday decorations.
Sure.
Thank
And as the council member mentioned, that I can't speak to your second question, but to your first question, yes. In fact, during Small Business Saturday, we made a point of reaching out to all of those businesses on Witherspoon Street because a number of them have been so impacted by the construction. I think it's important to point out also that all of the commercial properties within the municipality, many of those fall within the partnership, and we actively work to get out and interact with all of the businesses. So I've already been to Yasna Polana twice, in frequent communication with Princeton Shopping Center. We have an upcoming meeting at 2:06. So we're definitely embracing the entire geography and doing everything we can to reach out and support all of the businesses in Princeton. With respect to the recruitment piece that you mentioned, we're also tracking all available spaces. And 2 weeks ago, I was pleased to host a colleague of mine who's a retail recruitment expert based in New York City, who gave some wonderful insights and advice about how to approach some of the available spaces we have. So thank you for your
Great.
question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Leighton?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for being here, for embracing the new position you have, and for hitting the ground running. And I'd also like to just let the people in the public know that Witherspoon Street is alive and well, even though with the construction. Please, everyone, get out, do your shopping at small businesses, and patronize the businesses and local businesses we have here in town. They need your help, and they have beautiful merchandise. And also, albeit late, I did get to the opening of the new store on Witherspoon Street, and I would encourage people to go there because they have some very nice merchandise there, good for Christmas shopping or Hanukkah shopping. Thank you.
Exactly. Agree 100%. Thank you.
Eve?
I'll be quick. Also, thank you. Isaac, I think it's great that you're going to be coming monthly. I think, that really will help make sure that we're aware of issues, problems, as well as good news on a regular basis. So I appreciate that. And I did go downtown on Small Business Saturday, and it was crowded. It was a beautiful day, and there were must have been thousands of people downtown. So, and everything looked great. I love the Heinz Plaza, the little pop-ups. So yeah, it's a beautiful day. Thanks.
Agreed. Great.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay. Chief Picari, you have 2 August and September reports?
Yes, Mayor. So tonight I have for you the August and September police reports. As always, they'll be uploaded to the website for review. If there's any questions or concerns, you can certainly reach out or feel free to ask me tonight. The August police report was highlighted by our Youth Academy, which was reinstated after 2 years of not being able to have it, in addition to Community Night Out. Both huge successes, in my opinion. It was highlighted our ability to interact and connect with the community after such a long absence. Particularly the Youth Academy, we had over 20 middle-aged boys and girls from the community and 6 counselors that spent a week with the police department, and from soup to nuts, they learned everything about what we do and how we train and how we prepare, from physical fitness to crash investigation and criminal investigation. These young boys and girls did a great job. They had fun, and we got to know them and their families pretty intimately. It was really cool. As for Community Night Out, I think most of you were there. It was spectacular. And it was good for us to get out, be able to serve food to the community. So like I said, those two events were really highlighted in the August report. As far as the September report goes, I believe the September report was highlighted by our efforts with regard to the hiring process. In the month of September, we conducted our physical fitness testing for the police applicants that signed up for Princeton. In addition to that, we conducted panel interviews with the applicants that had passed and successfully moved on from the physical fitness portion. So that was time-consuming but productive. We did a good job. And just to give you an update on where we're at in that process, there were 180 applicants that we started with, and we're currently in the background phase with 7 of those applicants. We've narrowed it down. So we're hoping to move forward after the background phase with some additional interviewing, and then have some officers that we're prepared to present for hire to Public Safety Committee. And the last thing that I would mention is that after a lot of communication with the command staff, we've decided that in the new year, we're going to roll out our own version of a community police academy, and invite members of the community to come weekly and learn more about us and interact with us and engage and learn the different the things that we do day to day. I think it's going to be a really cool way to connect with the community.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Okay, Leticia?
Yes. Chief, I want to first congratulate you once again on your well-deserved promotion. It was really wonderful to see your proud family here, too. I want to mention my family was actually visiting from out of state, and they were here during the promotion ceremony, and they left very impressed with the impression that this is what we do at all of our meetings. So, but no, it was a very impressive, the ceremony itself was great, and congratulations once again. I do have a question regarding the September report under offenses, only because we haven't seen it in a while, and that's with the marijuana possession. I just wanted to ask you about if you can just tell us a little bit about under what circumstances somebody would be detained, or I'm not sure if it was an actual charge, because I think it's important for the public to know what, even though it's cannabis has been legalized, under what circumstances they could still be charged.
Correct. So there are certain circumstances, and I think what you're referring to is I believe there was one, correct?
Yes, there was just one.
One incident?
Right.
Yeah, so if there is a individual that is in possession of unregulated marijuana and or unregulated marijuana at a certain weight, it would become criminal. There's also certain situations where there are mandatory notifications with schools and things of that nature, and that's also specific to the size and or quantity of marijuana, which was a contributing factor in that one case.
Okay. And I just wanted to point it out because I think it is important for the public to know that it's still, under certain circumstances, it would still be an offense.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
and I think the biggest misconception is it has to be regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. David, then Michelle, then Eve.
So I had 2 things I wanted to touch on. One, it sounds like you're making great progress in the hiring. I know that you had a lot fewer applicants this year and years past, and it didn't occur to me to ask when we first heard that news 1 or 2 reports ago, whether you've been in touch with other departments and seen a similar decline, because it occurs to me that, with all of the defund the police noise that's been going on in the country, that there might just be a decline in general in interest in a career in policing. So I wonder if you could reflect on that.
Yeah, so it's not only in Princeton where we're seeing that decline in applications and number of people. It's statewide, probably countrywide. But it's a concern of ours. We're definitely meeting regularly, trying to address it, trying to improve on our recruitment and selection. But I think there are a lot of contributing factors, you know, to the overall decline in people applying for law enforcement positions.
And I think this Princeton Academy that you're talking about starting up could be a great way to try to address that. It's almost like, you know, what Mike Ye has done in terms of recruiting volunteer fire personnel has been nothing short of amazing by doing outreach. And so
Yeah.
maybe you can really increase the interest.
Yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal. And our hope is to attract people from Princeton. I think we can do a better job in that.
Great. And then on a separate note, I wanted to really thank you for going back to the 2019 data in the September report. Really been curious to see that, and it's super interesting that, you know, the offenses, the crashes and things like that are actually down from 2019, which sort of goes against the narrative that we've been hearing about the increase in driver misbehavior. Also interesting that the summonses seem to be significantly down from 2019. And I guess we should be thankful that the decrease in summonses hasn't led to an increase in incidents. But I guess, are you satisfied that the number of summonses that are being given out right now is sort of the right number? Or should we be striving to ramp back up to what it was pre-COVID?
Interesting questions. And I guess my best answer would be this. We're optimistic with the changes that we're making with technology and the way that we're looking at crash data and how we are educating and enforcing and doing other measures to try and reduce these crashes. We're hoping that this trend continues. With regard to summons output, I don't know that we're going to see numbers like 2019 really ever again. There have been changes to legislation that directly impact the police administration's ability to use citation production or citation numbers, quotas, things of that nature, to determine suitability for promotion and overall performance. So I think that's drastically impacted the numbers that you see. But like you said, in 2019 we had 739. Now this is to date, not for the full year, obviously, but 739 crashes in 19 versus 508 to date in 22. Now that could be volume, obviously, I'm sure that's a contributing factor, but it's also our efforts to rethink enforcement and understand that it's not always a ticket that can correct behavior.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Michelle?
Great, thank you. And congratulations again, Chief. It's great to have
Thank
you
you so
here.
much.
I really appreciate it. I'm excited to hear about the Community Police Academy as well. That's going to be terrific. I think a great recruitment tool and just a great outreach in the current climate. I just wanted to ask a simple question. The number of new hires that we're looking to fill now, I know that the retirement's coming down the pike. Where did we see it? Or is 7 the 2023 target?
Yeah, so we've had so much discussion about that, and I think the best answer I can give you is right now we're at our staffing levels at 48 officers, and we've recently lost some young officers to other agencies, which is unfortunate and is something we need to look at and examine and discuss further. But I don't want to commit to a number. We definitely need to hire, but we need to make sure that we're hiring best applicant and not
Great.
at all sacrificing our standards. Right now, we have 7 in our background phase, but that's not to say that we're going to have 7 suitable applicants that we can present.
Okay.
So as many as we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Good luck. I know it's hard.
Thank you
It's
so
hard
much.
these days, yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Eve?
Thanks. Also, congratulations again. I thought what struck me was the love your family had for you. I don't mean to get all. It was just when your kids in particular, it was really heartwarming. So it was really lovely to see. So a couple of my colleagues also had the same question about the marijuana case. And I wanted to thank you for adding the 2019 data, because that is really useful, just
Sure.
because 2020 and 2021 are so anomalous. It's hard to know what a norm is. So I really appreciate that. And I hope we can hang on to it for maybe another, I know it's going to get busy, but maybe another year or so through 2023, if we can squeeze everything in. I actually had, my single question that's left is, the application for a permit to carry. So 2 questions on that one. Is that an open carry or a concealed carry? And I know there've been some lawsuits and some changes in the law recently. I don't know to what extent they affect New Jersey, but I wonder if you can just talk through briefly what the process would be to get that kind of permit. Do people need a reason, or is it just, hey, I'm a civilian, I want to have a gun with me?
Sure. So in the past, you would have to prove a justifiable cause or justifiable need, as they call it, in order to be granted a permit. And it would be conceal, Eve. So not out in the open the way you would see a police officer with a sidearm on their waist. It would be concealed under their clothing. But in the past, you would have to prove that justifiable need, and the courts have changed that. So in New Jersey, there are more people applying for that concealed carry permit, as you mentioned. Now, the courts are not quick to approve them right now, as there's a backlog, there's some ongoing discussion, so I wouldn't be surprised if there are subtle changes to that law. But yeah, so right now, you no longer need the justifiable need, and these permits are supposed to be approved by the Superior Court judge in 60 days, but we're not seeing that happen right now. I would imagine there's going to be some subtle changes coming.
And so we granted 2 in September. Is that, I didn't notice any in August, and maybe there were some in July that I wasn't, but I'm just wondering what we're might be looking at, a couple a month, or it could be
Yeah,
more?
maybe, but there haven't been many so far.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's hard to forecast what
Right.
will be coming down the road, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few changes to the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Eve. Any other questions for the police chief? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Have a good evening. All right, next up is the update on Princeton's climate action plan.
Mayor, you have public comment? Mayor,
I'm sorry.
you have to do public comment?
Oh, I went right over that. My bad. Sorry. Sorry, Christine. Public comment for items not on the agenda. Anybody in the room have anything they want to bring up that's not a agenda item? This would be the time. All right, I don't see anybody in the room. Anybody that's joining us over Zoom, if you have a question or comment for something that's not on the agenda, just raise your virtual hand and we'll recognize you. All right, no hands are up, so we'll close the public comment portion and we'll go back to the presentation. And
Do you want me to sit?
thank you, Dawn.
Did you send it to him? No.
Do we have the? Hey, Adam, and when I say hey, Adam, Adam's the guy in the back room that handles all our technology, just so people know. Adam, can you bring the presentation for Sustainable Princeton up? Thank you.
While Deanna's bring that up, I'll start by saying thank you to Mayor and Council for the opportunity for us to give you an update on the Climate Action Plan. And while I'll be the one presenting, I do want to acknowledge my team who have been critical in putting together this update. They're not here with me. Some are here with me tonight, some will be watching. I do want to acknowledge my predecessor, Molly Jones, Josh Perlsweig, Jenny Ludmer, Alana Burke, Becca Goldman, and Madeline Stahl, who all helped pull this together. So as you may recall, in 2019, Mayor and Council adopted a climate action plan. And in that plan, it called for, in 3 years, to do a progress report. So here we are tonight to give everyone an update. Go to the next slide. So every year, Sustainable Princeton has been tracking our greenhouse gas emissions, and we set a goal in 2019 when the plan was adopted to reduce emissions 80% by 2050, with some interim goals to reduce emissions 50% by 2030, 65% by 2050. So this is the trajectory that we need to make to get to 80% by 2050. What's in blue is actual, and you can see a dip there from the COVID lockdown, but you can see a slight uptick. Now that things are getting back to normal, our emissions are heading upward again. Next slide. So just as a refresher, where are our production-based emissions coming from? The majority of emissions come from our built environment. They are our homes, our schools, our commercial buildings, and it is the emissions associated with the heating and cooling and the electrification of those buildings. Another big chunk is transportation, and a small sliver are the emissions resulting from solid waste and from wastewater and water treatment. Next slide. So a little more fun, perhaps more accessible way to visualize where our emissions come from is using what I think has become the universal language, emojis. You can see just what portion comes from commercial energy, residential energy, transportation, waste, and wastewater. Thanks. So this is going back to when we have available data to 2010. You can see this in another way. You can see the dip in 2020 during the pandemic and the trend going back upwards. So there are a little over 80 actions in the plan, and we've been tracking them based on where they are in terms of progress. Started obviously means we have started that action. We being, could be a member, it could be the municipality, it could be Sustainable Princeton, whoever was identified as the lead has started that. Ongoing our actions are things that you have to continue to do. We should be continuing to upgrade our buildings to be more energy efficient. It's not something that you ever stop doing. Not started are things that, as you can imagine, have not been attempted to be started yet. Completed are things that are one and done, like adding a green building and sustainability element to the master plan. That was done, so we can count that as completed. So it gives you an idea of just, where we are in terms of accomplishing all the actions in our plan. Next slide. So I'm just going to go through key accomplishments in each of the 5 sections. The first section in our plan is energy. And as you may all recall, the town did implement a renewable energy aggregation program in 2020 that lasted 18 months, which offered 50% or an opt-up option for 100% renewable electricity supply product. That contract ended last December, and the town can consider doing another iteration of that when the electricity markets become favorable again. And the town is also seeing quite an increase in solar PV installations. If you go to the next slide, you can see, based on permit data, just how much additional solar installations have occurred in our town since 2019. Part of that is due to the cost of solar PV panels going down, but also with the state putting into place its permanent solar renewable energy certificate program. So before it was a little uncertain as to what you would get from SRECs, solar renewable energy certificates, and now that the state has made a set price, it's made the market more certain, which has allowed people to move ahead and install solar. So that's quite a bright spot, pardon the pun, in our climate action plan actions. Next slide. So land use and transportation. As I mentioned, the town did adopt a green building and sustainability element to the community master plan. As you are all aware, there are numerous new housing developments that are planned for the town, and when you look at where they are located, they all follow smart growth principles. They are location efficient, meaning they are in areas where there was already development, so you are getting the advantage of the emissions that were already spent in developing that area and not encroaching upon undeveloped areas. And you may not be aware, but Princeton was selected as one of the first towns to be featured as a New Jersey DEP Destination Electric Towns. And if you go around to many of our shops, you might see a label in the window that says Destination Electric, which shows that there are some places in town where you can charge while you come and patronize the businesses in our town. In our natural resources sector, the town did hire an open space manager. That was an action in the plan that's been filled by Cindy Taylor. The land wind tract was preserved, which is part of what is called the Emerald Necklace of Princeton. And the street tree inventory is underway right now, which was also an action in the plan. Under materials management, Isaac is still here in the audience. You might wonder what the Princeton Business Partnership has to do with materials management. In that section, there are a number of actions that focus on actions that will create more experiences than things. So the more vibrant downtown area or commercial areas that we have in town that offer things to do and things to see, the more we spend our time on experiences and the less we spend on acquiring things. So if you want to reduce emissions from the materials and goods that we consume, you want to start by reducing how much we actually consume. And we could do that by, switching to valuing experiences over things. So the Princeton Business Partnership is, you can already see based on Isaac's update, creating more places to go to hang out in our town. And that should help us reduce emissions from all the goods and services we consume. Town also has a food insecurity task force. There is a lot of food that goes to waste and could be sent to people rather than landfills. So that's been a great group of organizations and led by Roe and the Human Services Department to help get food to where it needs to go rather than getting sent to our landfill. And as you approved in a most recent council meeting, the town will be starting a cart-based solid waste and bulk reservation program, and that will help reduce emissions as well. And resiliency. So there has been a lot accomplished, I think, in terms of resiliency, specifically with stormwater. As Deanna and Jim know, the town passed a pretty renowned stormwater ordinance. The Flood and Stormwater Commission was reformed, and I don't know if it gets quite recognized by the community just what sort of a layered, thoughtful process the municipality is taking when it comes to stormwater management. There are a lot of things that have to happen first before you can do future things, and it starts with mapping the stormwater system. That's been underway. That was critical in order to get to the next step, which is to have a stormwater management plan. and examining the potential for a stormwater utility. All of those things have to sort of coincide in a process for the town to actually have a holistic view of its stormwater management. So what will it take to reach the goals of 80% by 2050? I think we need to recognize, again, what our strengths are. We have members in our community who serve on council, who serve on boards, committees, and commissions that have a lot of subject matter expertise. We also have municipal employees, we have school district employees that are very skilled professionals, and we have a highly engaged community. These are our assets. Our barriers to change, in my view, really is capacity. There is only so much we can all do, and there is a lot to do. And I know that's a challenge for council and the municipal staff of prioritizing and just managing the throughput of all the things that need to get done. There are some really notable opportunities, incentives that are available to us. If you follow the climate change and energy thought leaders, you will hear that the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act is transformative. It has in it the incentives and things that communities like Princeton can avail themselves to that will help us reach climate action goals. The bipartisan infrastructure law is something that is also includes incentives that will help offset the costs of doing the things we need to do to have more resilient infrastructure. And there are numerous state and utility incentives and grants that everyone in the community can take advantage of. And through all that, I think we do need to make sure we continue to focus on equity, that as we do all of the things we have laid out in the Climate Action Plan, that we have to, continue to make sure that we are doing things in a way that makes the community better for everybody, and that the people who are usually not included in the decision-making are included. Next slide. So, what's ahead? I want to maybe tee up the next speaker. Justin Lesko is going to give an update on the master plan. I don't think it can be understated just how important the master plan is going to be in helping the town achieve its climate action goals. We know there is a housing shortage and a housing crisis. We know that there is a climate crisis and a racial equity crisis. So what that master plan results in is going to determine how we build, where we build, and who is going to live in our community. And I think it's also real important that we think about how we interact with each other and how we meet the challenge, those three challenges: climate crisis, housing crisis, and the racial equity crisis. And that I think we're really a fortunate community that we have so many people who are so skilled and so committed and so passionate about this, and it really is going to require all of us to continue to work together in order to meet our climate action goals. That's it. Questions?
Yep, okay. Michelle, David?
Thank you, Christine. This was excellent. Just a couple things that occurred to me. One is when you were talking about the solar panels and residents, I think 300 and some residents, has there been consideration to doing any type of, seminars or outreach and talking, or maybe you've done it, to residents about where to go and what kind of providers are there, and even creating some kind of a panel, some type of outreach?
We have done seminars about community solar, which is something that is an option for people who, for whatever reason, can't put solar. They are a renter, perhaps they don't have the right orientation for solar, or they just can't afford it. So we have done sessions, and we do have on our website like a toolkit to help people to choose a community solar provider. There are going to be many, many more community solar projects being built across the state of New Jersey, and that's a great opportunity for people in our community to subscribe. We haven't done anything recently about if you're looking to install solar on your property recently, but that is something we could certainly think to do. I did note that at the November 21st Historic Preservation Commission, they passed a resolution for guidelines on how to install solar in our historic districts, which I think will go a long way in helping to accelerate the adoption of solar in our historic districts.
Great, that's wonderful. And my second comment is, you mentioned value and experiences and, working with the Princeton Business Partnership. And I just wanted to mention that right now there's consideration of relooking at the allowable uses, and that goes hand in hand with kind of the experiential retail environment, because our ordinances today don't really allow for a lot of that. So we need to look at the allowable uses. So the time is right to cooperate. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Dave?
Yeah, so the question I have is, first of all, I want to give you a chance to maybe give a slightly different spin. You talked several times about how we had the COVID dip, and now our numbers are going back up again, and it made it feel to me like this is a really bad thing. But if you look at the charts and graphs, we're still below what the trend line would have been if we hadn't had the dip. So I just want to emphasize that it's not such bad news that we're going back up again, right?
Right. Well, what's unknown is how much of that will persist, how much of that was a result of people who are going to remain working from home and not commuting anymore. How much of that shift, one of the reasons it dipped was because included in those emissions is the university's emissions. So when the students weren't on campus, all of that emissions just shifted to, where they were at home. It's also unknown how much some of the installation of air filter systems, a lot of buildings installed systems that are filtering the air, and that consumes more electricity. So it's kind of unknown how much of that is included in the uptick. So I think it's too soon to tell just, are we on a trend to go back to where we were, or is there anything during COVID that's going to persist in keeping our emissions down?
So I'm glad you expressed it that way, because I think we should be thinking about how we can encourage some of the carbon savings that we experienced during COVID. For instance, as a municipality, should we be actually encouraging employees to work from home more than what was typical before? And I don't actually know quite where we are right now, Bernie, if everybody's just back full time, or if we really have flex schedules and are encouraging people to sometimes, to occasionally work from home. Because in a small way, that would be, trying to preserve some of the carbon savings that we saw during COVID, which was kind of a silver lining.
Yeah, there are some flex schedules currently, and people do occasionally work from home, but generally people are here because, quite frankly, they need to be here to service the public for the most part. But when they can work from home, they do.
I think that meetings that are now held on Zoom were meetings that used to be where people were traveling from one end of town to the other. So just think about how much of that is going to remain as just common practice, is to not have to drive from one municipal building to another, or if you're in the school district, from one school building to another, you're going to be having all those meetings over Zoom now. So,
right. So as we consider those decisions, I mean, obviously we've come back as a council, but should the planning board come back in person? Should the BCCs come back in person? Those are questions that should be informed, I think, by the climate impact of the decision as well as other aspects of the decision.
One of the other trends that we hope will persist is, perhaps you've all noticed, when during COVID, a lot of people switched to riding their bikes to get around, and I certainly see a lot more people getting around on electric bikes and scooters, and so that is a change that we hope will continue, where people aren't relying on getting around by car.
Thank you.
Leighton and then Mia.
Hi, Christine, thanks. Could you just say a few words about how neighborhoods can get involved, and not as individuals, but as neighborhoods, and work on sustainable activities neighborhood by neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think you're referring to Sustainable Princeton Star Neighborhood Program. We have a program where neighborhoods, and neighborhood is loosely defined. It can be a street, it could be a couple of streets, where that neighborhood can achieve certain actions that will get them points, and it's a great way for neighborhoods to kind of prioritize the things that they have some excitement and energy about. So for instance, we worked with Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood to install storm drain planters, 10 of them last summer. We have a Star neighborhood that had like a community yard sale. We have neighborhoods that had a block party where they had electric vehicle demonstrations, battery-powered landscaping equipment demonstrations. We have a neighborhood group in Princeton Community Village that is focused on planting some natives and increasing recycling education. So those are some things that individuals can do.
Just speaking on behalf of the Witherspoon-Jackson community, it is a great way to build community, and I would encourage other neighborhoods to get involved. It's good work, and it pays off in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mia?
I just wanted to take a moment to comment on how remarkable it is that we are just talking matter-of-factly about plowing through the Climate Action Plan, and just to provide some background context for community members who may just be coming into this process. This is a totally organic process that is from, there was participation from every sector of the community, and Sustainable Princeton spent about 1.5 years with representatives from all of the various subject experts that Christine mentioned, and who came up with the goals that we are now evaluating. And I think what's particularly special about this plan is that it's not superimposed from without. All of these goals were hammered out by members of the community who are intimately familiar with our capacity as a community, our strengths and weaknesses, and what makes sense. Hats off to Christine, because there was obviously not always consensus within the working groups of what the goals should be, and she managed to basically wrangle everyone together into agreement, and that we have the plan. I'm hoping that the master plan will have a similarly successful ending, but it is really worth noting that it's remarkable that the plan was adopted, and that we've made this much progress already, and that we're systematically working our way through. So hats off to Sustainable Princeton, and to Christine in particular. Thank you for your leadership on this, without which this plan could not have come into being or progressed this far, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sachs. And one thing that's hard to measure and have metrics about is how many times I hear the Climate Action Plan invoked or mentioned. Just recently, Tim Venata, the new fleet manager, sat here in this seat talking about how he's working to reduce the carbon footprint of the fleet. I think a week before that, Cindy Taylor talked about the plan she's working on that's included in the Climate Action Plan. So while it's not a plan with any teeth per se, in that there's no mandate in it, there's no requirements, do hear it get used as it was intended, as sort of a guiding document and referenced, and something to help prioritize actions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Eve?
I'll echo Mia's thanks to you personally, Christine, and to Sustainable Princeton in general for doing this. And I sort of want to follow up on a little bit of the conversation that you and David were having about, kind of are we on the right track? Because there was the COVID dip, and I wonder, this is kind of maybe a little off topic, like just as we saw, for example, enormous increases in garbage because people weren't going to work. Well, obviously people weren't maybe driving to work, so we have reductions, but people are, then they have to heat their homes, whereas normally they turn the heat down when they left. So I'm glad to see that there was something of a COVID dip, but it also, I guess my question is, how well documented is that dip when you take everything into account? And then secondly, not to invite you to be either, overly positive or overly negative, like, do you feel that we are on the right trajectory? And my next question, to wrap everything up, is what can we do in 2023 that has like the most bang for the buck? What can we say, as council members, we were talking in a meeting earlier today that David and me and I were at, is like, oh, we really need to formulate our goals for 2023. So if you were to name I know this is a mouthful of various unrelated things, but if you were to say a couple of things that this is what we should be doing now, and this is where we need to move on a couple of things, that would be really helpful, and we can keep those in our minds as we go forward. And I want to say, as the liaison to PEC, everything PEC does is informed by Climate Action Plan,
Yes.
which part of the plan. So it really is a living, breathing document.
Yes, and kudos to Tammy Sands and the PEC, because they use it, as basically the structure on how they decide what their priorities are. I think I'll take those in not in order. Your second question, I'm an internal optimist, so I'm always positive that we're headed in the right direction. What can you do in 2023 in terms of prioritizing? I think you have to, because our built environment and transportation is the biggest source of our emissions, anything you can prioritize in 2022 when it comes to buildings with the municipality's own buildings, because once you don't replace HVAC systems every year, you only do it every 15, 20 years. So when you do it, you should do it to be the most sustainable as possible, the most efficient as possible. And when it comes to transportation, and I know this is such a tough thing to do, but we do need to have better infrastructure for biking and walking and make it easier to live in Princeton without needing a car. And also planning where the EV charging infrastructure is going to be. I know the municipal fleet, the school district fleet, the biggest challenge to switching that fleet to electric is where you're going to put the charging infrastructure. So figuring out where that is going to go sooner rather than later will help you, switch to electric vehicles sooner rather than possible, notwithstanding all the supply chain issues that there is right now, but those supply chain issues will clear up, but you need to figure out where the charging infrastructure is going to go. For public infrastructure for charging, you need to prioritize where it's going to benefit the most people. So where should the public charging infrastructure go? It should be where people who are already mobility challenged reside. So if you think about thoughtful planning about where the charging infrastructure should go. And then what was the first question? It was about the emissions. Yeah, could you repeat that, Eve? I don't think I quite understood what you were getting at.
I guess what I was getting at is we show a pretty great dip in the carbon emissions during COVID, and I was wondering, I'm sure it's very well verified, but I use the example of garbage. People weren't going to work, so we were generating much more garbage in the municipality and obviously less in the places where people work. So I'm wondering if there's some of the same trade-off during COVID. Yes, people aren't driving to work, but now they're staying home all day, that they have to heat their homes. So
if I could just reframe a little bit, I know that the measurements we do are production side, not consumption side.
Correct.
And so some things are not being captured. And I think that if you could explain a little bit about it in those terms and sort of say, yeah, on the production side, we're measuring all of this, but on the consumption side, we might be missing these couple of things.
Right, so production-based greenhouse gas inventories, you can imagine you sort of just draw like a line around the boundaries of Princeton, and every building in there that has its air conditioner on, has its heating on, has lights on, all the emissions that come from that, which come from the utility. The utility, PSEG, tells us how much therms of natural gas were consumed, how many kilowatt hours of electricity were consumed, and you can determine what the emissions are from that. Transportation emissions, we're now using Google Environmental Insights, which can models like how much actual traffic is moving within the boundaries of Princeton, whether it's in commuting, out commuting, or just moving within the boundaries. And so that's what is included in your production-based. Consumption-based inventories, which we haven't been updating because they're a little more difficult to wrap your hands around. Look at the full life cycle emissions of everything you consume. So my laptop, what were the emissions that were emitted when the materials were mined, when they were the emissions from distributing it, and the emissions from when I dispose of it. That's harder to measure and harder to set a target against. So, but I think what Evie, you're asking is like, it's hard to tell how much of that dip and that bump back up is from those situations that you described. People start working from home, so the electricity consumption switched from your work, which might have been in New Brunswick, to home. That emission, so those emissions are now being counted not in New Brunswick anymore, they're being counted in Princeton, right? It's hard to get a handle on that. So it's also harder to see the macro trends and the micro trends on a year-to-year basis. So I wouldn't dismiss what we see that's informative when we see the decrease and the increase, but what really matters is what persists year over year over year. And trying to lock in some of those emissions reductions through the behaviors that came about as a result of COVID, like working from home, biking instead of taking your car. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
And if I have a few more moments of your time, I did want to give an update about the Landscaping Transition Fund. I know you mentioned in your opening remarks, Councilmember Eve, about the restrictions going into place. If you may recall, we had a number of generous donors that contributed to a landscaping transition fund. We have about a month left of trying to distribute it, and we've have received and awarded 22 applications to individual landscaping companies, so we only have about $2,000 left. So those are 22 small landscaping companies in Princeton. Based on their applications, that is 156 employees that those landscaping companies employ. Based on their application, that's 708 properties that they serve in the municipality of Princeton. So a total number of 102 pieces of equipment that includes battery-powered backpack blowers, handheld blowers, trimmers, batteries, and chargers. And we estimate that would contribute to a reduction of 594 tons of CO2e, or about 132 passenger vehicles being removed from the road annually in Princeton. So we hope to have the full impact report after December, when hopefully we get two or three more applications for the rest of the fund. So if you know anybody who is registered with the municipality but hasn't applied for it, please let them know.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Okay. Next up, Princeton Master Plan and November 30th Open House Update.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm going to talk this way, so if you have, so I can get into the microphone. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to just yell it out and I'll turn around. Thanks for having me tonight for this update on our master plan process. And we're reaching a key point now, so I wanted to update the council and the public that's here virtually and in person, and just put another reminder for our master plan open house that's going to be this Wednesday at the library. So by way of reminder, a master plan is a legal document in New Jersey that every municipality is required to have zoning, and they're required to examine it periodically. It provides guidance for the council on your land use ordinances, and we see that through the master plan consistency process that plays out at the planning board. It also provides guidance for our land use boards as they hear applications for development. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, it's a vision for and by the community with goals in it, statement of objectives, and other things for how the 31,000 people in Princeton want to see it grow. Here's our progress to date. We've provided our consultants, Clark Hayton Hints, with other existing reports and documents ranging from our current master plan to police crash data, the bike master plan, the SID study even, and they've been reviewing those in the background since for a long time now. We've had 5 steering committee meetings, and our steering committee is made up of 13 members of the public, some of which are here tonight. I've been going around and speaking to boards, commissions, and committees in the municipality, as well as community groups, to get the word out, to get those groups involved, and to ask them for their expertise. We had an economic survey in the summer. Those were the yellow signs that said, tell us what you want. Actually, we had 2 economic surveys because one was specifically for Princeton University students. So we received the results back from them, and that specific economic analysis will be finalized soon, and then that'll feed into a new economic element of the master plan. We recently completed the first community visioning survey, and then this upcoming open house, which again is this Wednesday, will discuss the results of that community visioning survey and continue to drill down into what's going to be in our master plan. So here's more information on this Wednesday. The event will be at the library. It'll be pop in when you can from 4 to 7. If you want to come for 15 minutes, feel free to. If you want to come for the whole 3 hours alongside me, feel free to. We'll have stations around the room for people to comment on broader topics at this time, like open space, housing, getting around Princeton, those types of things. And then we'll continue on with another community visioning survey, drilling down even further on the elements that'll go into the master plan in late winter, early spring, followed by a second open house. Again, same deal, most likely at the library in the spring. And then the plan will ultimately be adopted at public planning board hearings after we release a draft document in early summer. And the one thing that I skipped over was that we are also allowing boards, commissions, and committees to recommend, to provide recommendations, and some of them have taken us up on that thus far, and we'll continue to offer that, but the sooner the better. So another part of the reason I'm being here is for members of the public, and especially council members and mayor, if you would like me to attend any community group meetings or go to any boards, commissions, and committees, I'd be happy to do so. And that's the reminder. The biggest takeaway is this Wednesday night, please show up at the library for our open house. And I'm happy to take any other questions, and I'll turn around at this point.
Thank you, Justin. David, and then Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Justin. Just one question I wanted to ask. At the last Master Plan Steering Committee meeting, there was some discussion about providing an opportunity for members of the public who can't make it to the open house in person to be able to react to the presentation. Mm-hmm. And I know that one of the consultants mentioned in passing it wasn't really in their scope, but they were certainly able to do it. And I guess I'm asking you if there has been any further conversation about that. I'd also like to ask my colleagues on council if they would be supportive of, authorizing some additional funding to enable that to happen if necessary.
Mm-hmm. Thus far, we haven't put that into place yet. We've kind of paired the surveys with the open houses, one online and one in person, to allow people to contribute to either or both as they feel comfortable. The idea for the town hall style meeting actually came up at one of those Witherspoon Jackson Neighborhood Association meetings, and I think it's a good one. But we're waiting to get through this open house, see what kind of turnout we have, and then we could, put a plan into place to have some sort of town hall style meeting.
So you're saying that you think if the town hall style meeting were to be hybrid, that would be adequate opportunity for people to participate online, that we don't need to let them, put comments on the website or something like that?
What we had heard at the Witherspoon Jackson meeting was an all online one, but I haven't really discussed it with the steering committee or our consultants until we get through this open house, but we'd be open to either. I think you have all shown us that these hybrid meetings can work.
I think that's it's not clear what that would look like, David, what you're proposing, and I think it's not clear that it would require extra funding, but I think we would have to, it's an abstract request to ask council they would provide extra funding. I think we would need to discuss this more in the steering committee and find out what it would look like.
Okay. I think we need to have that discussion. I think my sense of what it would look like is just some kind of a page on the website that would allow user feedback, because right now it's all one directional. The website associated with the master plan presents material but doesn't ask for input on the material.
So I think that should happen anyway, regardless of.
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
If I may, to your point about funding, it would be outside of our current scope of the master plan, and either way we decided to go might require some additional funding.
Yeah, so maybe that's a question to ask the consultants as well, to get a little better sense of what would be involved.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. I would, Michelle, let me just say one thing, and then it's your turn, and sorry that we've interrupted you. I would say the first question always is, how can we do this within the current budget before we in any way allude to outside people that we might throw more money at them. But anyway, so hopefully we don't have to. Michelle.
It's a pretty extensive budget. Thank you, Justin, for the update. A couple things. One is, can you just kind of explain what the time frame is and what the anticipated, like for the public, what this report would look like and what like granular level of detail it will have and about when it will come out, just to kind of give the public an idea of what a master plan is, like what they'll be getting.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, first, I have another presentation that covers exactly that, and I'll be giving it at the Shade Tree Commission tomorrow night.
Okay.
So I would definitely recommend, if any members of the public want to see that, I'll be there at 5 p.m. tomorrow. And the master plan is comprised of several elements. You could kind of see their symbols here. Let's see if I remember each of them. Land use, community facilities, economic development, mobility, historic preservation, open space and recreation and conservation, green building and sustainability element that Christine mentioned, the housing element, and our utility service element. And those are really the chapters of the master plan. And each of those chapters has kind of different things in it, ranging from the climate change hazards assessment that we'll have in our land use element to a stormwater management component in the utility services element. So these all really encompass the way we develop and use land in Princeton. But that being said, one of our main goals for this master plan is to make it so anyone could pick it up and read it and understand it. We've used Asbury Park's 2017 master plan and master plan reexamination as a model of the just kind of format, using images, using maps, using actionable items as our template. So I would encourage anyone that's interested to check that out too.
Thank you, Justin. And a time frame, do we have an idea?
We hope to have it completely adopted by June or July. That's when we would have those planning board public hearings. So working back from that, we'd have a draft document late spring. We'd have those open house and community visioning survey number 2 in late winter, early spring. And then that more or less brings us back to where we are today.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to invite you to attend the Recreation Commission meeting. That would be really essential to be involved. And I'll also mention that, the business community has had some outreach, but of course the Princeton Business Partnership Board meetings are always, you'd be really welcome there, and I think that would be another good opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, David has a quick comment on Michelle's, then we're going to Mia,
Yeah,
and then we're going to Eve.
Because we didn't get a super quantitative answer from Justin, I just want to point out that the housing element alone currently has over 1,000 pages. So, one chapter of our existing master plan. So it's a big document, and we're hoping the new consultant will boil it down a lot, but it's not clear exactly how much how much fat there is.
Thank you.
Mia?
First, I just wanted to second Mark's earlier comment about trying to work within our existing budget constraints, because we're already almost 100,000 over what we had originally planned for, which was several hundred thousand. This is not at all anyone's fault. It's just the reality that there were a lot of missing documents that just simply the town did not have, and most towns have them and are able to provide them to the consultant. And we had to spend time and money to recreate that. Also, on council, we have people who are very optimistic, and then we have others who are more realistic. And Justin, I love the optimistic projection of spring. Having been deeply involved with the green building and sustainability element, which took half a decade for just one element. I hope that we will do this more expeditiously, but I just don't want the public to have I think the chances of this being done by spring are, it would be amazing, but I just don't want the public to have that expectation. I also think putting that time frame out there gives a sense of anxiety that people feel like there's very little time left to participate. And I think the reality is that it's going to play out longer. I just think we have to be realistic here. And given the extent to which we prioritize public participation in our processes, and we have been told by the consultants that Princeton at this point is on track to facilitate a more extensive level of public participation in this process than they've seen in any other town. So, but that is time consuming, and the amount of input that you receive from that extensive and expansive level of participation also requires staff input, legal input, all sorts of input to cull through before you reach a final document. And all of that, I just, realistically, June sounds great. I just, just want to, be realistic here. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Eve?
Thanks, Justin, for this presentation. I want to really thank you for your leadership on this. You were kind of thrown into this, and I think you've risen to the occasion. So thank you. And also want to say that you and Louise Wilson, who's the chair of the planning board, came to the Environmental Commission. You submitted some information beforehand. People reacted, asked questions. Then we discussed those questions and others that came up. And I think it was a really useful discussion for the Environmental Commission, and I hope for you too. And then there were some recommendations that were sent on to be incorporated in the master plan. So it was, I think, a really good give and take. And I'm glad PC did that when they did. I know, well, maybe time is short, I'm not sure. Depends on, but, you know, I do, as you did, I encourage other, of our boards, commissions, and committees to participate in that, because I think it was a learning experience, and I think hopefully you also got some good information from the Environmental Commission members and others who attended. So, thanks.
Okay. Any other council comments or questions? Leighton?
Yeah, first I want to say thanks, Justin, and thank you for coming to the Witherspoon Jackson meeting. And I just wanted to share with you, the staff, and the public at large, that oftentimes when we do community visioning, there's a significant swath of people here in Princeton that are disengaged. Sometimes it's the underserved, sometimes it's not. Sometimes people don't vote just because they feel like it doesn't matter. But I would encourage you to continue to hear those voices who are sometimes silent, sometimes unheard, like the Princeton Housing Authority, and I would be more than willing to help you and others engage those people on the community visioning situation, because they too can be impacted and sometimes don't realize that their voices can make a difference and they should be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Leighton. Anyone else on council? All right. Justin, you hit all the points you needed to. Anything else we were supposed to ask you that we didn't?
No, that's it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, we have two public hearings on ordinances. So I'd like to go to ordinance 2022-39, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton modifying the provisions of ordinance 2021-26 pertaining to the expansion of outdoor dining during the COVID-19 pandemic and extending said provisions to November 30th, 2024. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Second by Eve. Council comments, questions? Michelle?
Yeah, I just want to mention that, this is an extension of what the governor has extended for the COVID ordinance, but we are also going to work on particulars for outdoor dining going forward, like, for instance, type of furniture and trash removal and regulations on the number of tables and that type of thing. So there is going to be additional, but this is just a beginning point. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay. Is there anything of significance that's different from what we've been doing in the past in this area that we should alert people to? Have we taken anything away, added anything, modified anything so far that's going to surprise anybody? Okay. Mia?
Does this in any way address the situation with the ongoing complaints that we have about the encroachment onto public space of the dining tables on Heinz Plaza?
No. The issue with Heinz Plaza is really being dealt with separately, because that's municipal property that's not considered a sidewalk the way it's defined, the way sidewalks are defined under the legislation. So, which is a long way of saying the municipality is not obligated to allow the restaurants on Heinz Plaza to continue to encroach, but there's, not under this legislation or under this ordinance.
So are we looking for an enforcement mechanism? Is that the issue?
On that one, I'm going to defer to administration, because I know that there have been ongoing conversations with the owner.
Okay. I mean, the only reason I ask is because I'm all for outdoor dining and for extending, but, we have one situation with existing outdoor dining on Heinz Plaza where we seem to be unable to successfully gain compliance from that restaurateur. And so it erodes the credibility of our initiative in terms of overall outdoor dining, because if we're not able to get one restaurateur to abide by the law in terms of the amount of space that they're allotted to, how will we successfully regulate all the other additional outdoor dining that will be coming online as Witherspoon changes?
Enforcement's a good question. I would just like to ask one specific question on this. On page 4, number 2, a walking path not less than 5 feet shall be maintained on public sidewalks. Now, I know that we try to enforce that on Nassau Street now, and I would suggest that 5 feet is not wide enough. There's a couple restaurants in particular that narrow the sidewalk quite a bit, and it's very hard, especially on weekends when the sidewalks are crowded, to get people moving past these couple places. So I'm just wondering, does this need to be so specific, or, you know, if the sidewalk's 8 feet wide or 12 feet wide or 20 feet wide, I mean, it makes a difference as to what the path should be. But I think to make the walking path so narrow that it's hard for 2 people abreast to walk through between the tables is problematic.
I know that provision is in the original ordinance and isn't being changed. What I'm trying to recall, and unfortunately I don't recall off the top of my head, is if that's already the standard that is in Princeton's code with respect to sidewalk tables, or if that was something specific to this ordinance. Deanna, I don't know if you can recall. I mean, I know we had discussed it at the time that this was originally put in place, what that distance would be. I just, unfortunately, I can't recall if it's specific to this ordinance or already in the code. David, you?
Yeah, I was wondering, you know, if you can reflect on this language, Trishka. It says not less than 5 feet, and it says so as not to obstruct pedestrian traffic. So to me, this language suggests that our enforcement officer could require more than 5 feet.
Oh, without
so
question.
as not to obstruct
Yeah, no,
pedestrian.
that's very much a minimum. I just don't recall if 5 feet as opposed to 4 or 6 or 8, where that number specifically came from, or if it's already in our code. But yes, you're absolutely correct. It was set up as a minimum. And I do believe that there is the ability, the way this is worded, to require more if it is creating an obstruction.
That is great. And then I think it's just a matter of us educating who does our enforcement, because I had heard that, hey, it's 5 feet, so there's nothing we can do about it. So going forward, I think we need to be a little more realistic about specific spots that are jamming up pedestrian traffic, which is actually a deterrent to all the businesses in the area, because if you can't walk from one end of a block to another, you're going to avoid that block. So we're not doing any businesses a favor by allowing the tables to take precedent over the pedestrian traffic.
Plus, it
So-
can create safety issues, and that's really what those minimum distances are about.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, and exactly why we are spending the millions of dollars to widen the sidewalk at Witherspoon Street is to allow that, but also to have safety. And I just wanted to mention too, in that same provision, there's under 1, there's the plan, the sketch, the picture, in terms of like the canopies, the placement, the chairs, and so on. And then in 2 is a plan for the control of litter. These are important details that we will need to be detailing out. Plan for litter, for instance, is to have some type of receptacle, particularly for those restaurants that have outdoor dining seating, but are takeout restaurants and are using the public bins. We need to have their own receptacles outside, and we need regulations in terms of doing that so that we have a cleaner streetscape, and that there's cleaning that the proprietors are doing in their spaces, that's not under the public's domain to clean. So there's a lot of details to work out here, and so there needs to be follow-up. So I'm committed with staff to work together to formulate those granular details.
And just so the council's aware, these are all things that have been, all of those details have been required all along, but it sounds like there may be more details that need to be sorted. But at least in terms of the ordinance that's in place, that's all, none of that's changing.
Yeah, I just think we need a balance. I think we have some restaurants that have put tables out for outdoor dining, haven't submitted a plan either for litter or how many tables or how much space they're taking up, and it really just comes down to finding enough time for our new enforcement person to be out and figuring out what that person can and can't do when they come across problems. So, all right, thanks. Other questions or comments, Leighton?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what I've just heard and what's been said. We are going out of our way post-COVID to make sure that our business community is well served. that our downtown is well-served, that we have high energy and high expectations for our downtown shopping district and all businesses in and around Princeton. But I think it's also important, particularly restaurants on Hines Plaza, on Witherspoon Street, on Nassau Street, to understand that we are reaching out to do them a favor, to make sure their business does not suffer, that to make sure it thrives. They also owe a nod to the public, the pedestrians in particular. We want to be more bicycle-centric, less car-centric. The business owners need to recognize that we are doing them a favor. They need to give a nod to the people walking around the streets and understand that we need to coexist, and to make sure that while their businesses are able to feed people in the public right away, that the public also has the right to be there and to somehow build equal footing on both sides to the extent that the businesses can.
Thank you, Lean. Any other council comments or questions before we go to the public? All right, seeing none. Anybody here in the room have any questions or comments? All right, anybody on Zoom have a question or comment? All right, seeing no public comment, we'll close the public comment part of the hearing, and roll call vote, please.
Ms. Perone-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, ordinance 2022-41, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton prohibiting the use of public sidewalks for bicycle riding, roller skating, and the operation of skateboards, and amending Chapter 8 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? David, thank you. Council, questions, comments? Eve, and then David.
I just wanted, Jim, I'm calling on you to maybe show that map. Oh, is it? Oh, all right, it's not on my screen. Thank you. Yeah, I think this really illustrates the area that the ordinance is talking about. But I do have an extremely ignorant question. Does that mean outside of these redlined areas that one is permitted to ride a bike or to use an e-scooter on the street?
That's a great question. It's not an ignorant question. It's a great question.
Okay. Well, I mean, I assume, obviously, you can't do it in the area that's redlined, but I actually thought there was a prohibition in general against riding bikes on the sidewalk. And my husband in particular is always upset when people come up the sidewalk. Not kids, but adults. So, okay, I'm glad it's not an ignorant question. So if someone, I don't know if this is a Trishka or a Jim or Deanna question, can speak a little bit about that. But I think this picture really illustrates the area that we're talking about for this ordinance, which I think is really helpful. So thank you, Jim.
There is no prohibition against riding on sidewalks outside of this area.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, well, one of the issues too, when we talked about, the Witherspoon Phase 2 and 3 and slowing it to Bike Boulevard was that, kids in particular would be able to utilize the sidewalks if they weren't comfortable in the Bike Boulevard situation on the street, even with slowing traffic down. So it is a consideration for the, children in particular, or bike riders like me who are really uncomfortable riding down Stockton. I can't ride down Stockton. I take my life in my hands with those trucks. So I ride on the sidewalk, and then I go on the street. So, it's an issue with narrow streets that we have in our town. I've seen it done in other towns where a sidewalk is a shared path. So I think it's really important, though, that when we do have a prohibition like this in the Central Business District, that we get extensive bike racks so that people will park their bikes or get off them and walk them with good signage. So we do need to put some infrastructure in place. And I know that engineering's working on the bike rack situation, but that's really important because there's not enough places to park. So.
Thank you, Michelle. David.
Yeah. So one question, I'm looking at the title, and it does not make mention of scooters. And I'm curious whether that's something that's covered in the body of the ordinance or it's not addressed at all. And it does seem to me that scooters, I mean, if skateboards are included and roller skates, I don't see how you don't include scooters. So I don't know who wants to answer that question.
I will. I just want to point out that the purpose of this specific ordinance amendment is to correct the current ordinance in terms of where the prohibition was intended to be. And we are working on a further ordinance to include all of those vehicles. Title 39, though, of the Motor Vehicle Code of the State of New Jersey does define bicycles to include e-bikes and other vehicles that do have other prohibitions associated with them. And we are working on a new ordinance to make sure that we have covered not only those types of vehicles, but any vehicle that we might be able to imagine in the future that we have no idea might crop up, say hoverboards, or who knows.
But scooters are old technology. I think I had one when I was a kid. So, I mean, just as a follow-up, so right now scooters are allowed on sidewalks in the Central Business District, is what you're telling me? Or does Title 39 allow us to extend the prohibition to scooters
I believe
as part of the same generic class of vehicles?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
As a skateboard with a
handle.
With a handle, yes.
Good.
I will, before you move any further, I would like to point out there are still a couple of typos in the ordinance as published, and we're going to have to make some corrections, but they don't change the intent of the amendments.
Great.
Thank you.
And I did have a follow-up, or not so much a follow-up. I wish I had asked the chief this question before he left, but I'm curious about the way enforcement of these regulations currently happens, and whether, there's educational outreach, especially to the youth in the community, to try and make sure they're aware of these rules. I know, during COVID, we had those great Walk Your Wheels decals on the sidewalk, which I think was really helpful. I don't know if we have any signage that marks the transitions from non-regulated sidewalks to regulated sidewalks, and just if you can, if Deanna or Jim knows how this stuff is enforced currently and what kind of education is done, that would be great.
We can follow up with police on that to get some answers. We do have signage that was put in place about a year ago at the transitions to indicate where you were supposed to walk your wheels, and we can refresh the, we had actually painted using a template on the sidewalk the walk your wheel symbol. We can refresh that as well.
Great, and maybe not just at the transitions, but internally to, yeah.
Yep.
So just a couple quick questions. Trishka, could the word scooter be inserted into this, or is that too significant a change?
Just pulling up the ordinance. I mean, without seeing the wording right in front of me. Here we go. No, I don't think it's just clarifying.
No, more of a clarification, so that could be inserted.
Jim, do you have any issue with that being added to the list? From a practical point of view? I mean, I think legally it's fine unless...
Yeah, I just think anything that defines that, you always will have some amateur lawyer say that doesn't mention the word scooter, so you can't tell me I can't ride my scooter up and down Nassau Street. So anyway, if we can insert that, I think that'd be great. My other comment, and Jim, thanks so much for saying you're working on a future ordinance that's going to address things more. I would just suggest, there's a big difference between Michelle or I riding our bicycle on a sidewalk versus David Speed Racer riding his e-bike or e-scooter or any motorized mode of transportation that has two wheels, one wheel, or whatever, because the speeds on those things, it's not a good experience for a child, an elderly person, somebody handicapped, to all of a sudden have something going literally 15 to 20 miles an hour, zip up within inches of them, go around them, totally surprise and shock them. Those are just accidents waiting to happen. So
Mark,
sorry.
Over here. To your point, I'm now completely confused, and I was going to ask a question earlier, what do we mean by scooter? And so I think David meant by scooter the kind of scooter that I have, which is like it is a...
Leg powered?
Yeah, it's leg power when I have enough energy. But now there's there's a newer type of scooter that you're talking about, or it's what we used to call a moped in my day, but I think now they call it an electric scooter or e-scooter or something
Well, you
like.
actually, your leg power scooter now comes motorized.
Okay.
Little throttle on the handlebar. So we're used to hold tight. Now you got one that twists and you go faster.
Wow, I have to look into this. But
I'm just saying for the future,
yeah.
I think we need to pay attention to all over town because we're getting a
But
fair
what
number
are
of
we
complaints.
talking about in terms of adding to this ordinance? Are we talking about we're not talking about these motorized things, which are motorized things even allowed anywhere on sidewalks now? Or is that an area that hasn't even been regulated yet?
This says
Bicycles and motorized bicycles, so I assume it includes every vehicle other than a car or a motorcycle.
I think that's why we need to clarify. It's a good point. It
But
probably
I-
should say scooters and motorized scooters for everything in red, but the future ordinance that Jim mentioned, I think we need to look at all over town. Motorized, whatever, are a problem on sidewalks.
Not on the sidewalks.
I mean, if I had a 5-year-old child, I want that child to be able to ride their tricycle on the sidewalk. But-
And if I may, state law does govern that. Low-speed e-bikes and e-scooters are regulated like bicycles. Drivers of low-speed e-bikes and e-scooters must ride in the same direction as traffic and obey all traffic lights, signs, and signals. Should not ride on sidewalks. Now, it doesn't say shall not, it says should not. Off-road trails generally do not allow motorized bicycles, but may allow e-bikes and e-scooters, and regulations vary by municipality and county. So that is the ordinance we're working on. But again, I just want to repeat that this is just to make sure, what we have right now is an ordinance in place that can be interpreted to allow you to ride a bicycle on Palmer Square West.
Yep.
And on one half of Palmer Square East, and on half of Holdfish Street, and that wasn't the intent. So this is really just editing the existing ordinance to make sure that we've got the streets that were intended not to allow bikes to be ridden on, to fix that.
Yep. Jim, thanks for explaining that, and that also is a good segue for me to say, I will tell myself to be quiet about any future ordinance because we're having a public hearing on this specific ordinance, so we should limit our conversation to this specific ordinance. So I will scold myself and ask if anyone has any other council comments or questions on this specific ordinance. All right, hearing none. Anyone in the room have any questions or comments? Okay. Adam, I see a hand up over Zoom. I see 2 hands up now. Can we bring the first person in, and we'll, just for the public coming in over Zoom, you have 3 minutes. Just say your name and address, please, and then we'll listen to you.
Hello, my name is Gautam Rao, 184 Mansgrove Road. Thank you for this interesting conversation. I take my child to school on an e-bike. I have a trailer on the back. My child sits in the back, and I take him to school. It's a wonderful experience. I also take my children to downtown Princeton, and that's a wonderful experience. There's ups and downs, and I use an e-bike. E-bike has been a fantastic medium for me because I get tired and it helps me. But there are roads that I don't feel comfortable taking my kid on, and I have them sit and I use the sidewalk. So what I'm hearing now is that privilege of going on the sidewalk may be taken away, which kind of upsets me. So I wanted to appeal for your consideration and modification for your ordinance that allows for parents like me who are taking their children to use the sidewalks, even in these areas, even if it's an e-bike. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, Adam, can we bring in the other person that had their hand up? Dale?
Yes. Hello, this is Dale Mead. I'm astounded at this discussion because I remember 10 years ago, the ordinances in the borough and the township were very simple and straightforward. In the borough, you were allowed to ride on the sidewalks except in the areas designated. And those designated areas were primarily in the downtown area. In the township, bike riding on the sidewalks was prohibited, except in certain areas, and those areas were primarily around the middle school and other schools. And at what time did we get rid of the township ordinance that prohibited bikes on the sidewalks? And before you answer that, let me just go on to my second question before my 3 minutes gets used up. But it seems to me the primary rule ought to be that pedestrians have the right of way on the sidewalk and that no bicycle or motorized vehicle shall impede that right of way. And if you make that the guiding principle for these ordinances that you're trying to construct, I think it would be extremely helpful because my wife had to vacate the sidewalk on Jefferson Avenue in late August when a greater than kind of middle-aged man came down the sidewalk on the eastern side of Jefferson, probably at close to 20 miles an hour. And there was no way she would have, if she stayed on the sidewalk, she would have been hurt and probably hospitalized or worse. And so let's get serious about protecting the pedestrians. If you want to make this a walkable town, let's make a right-of-way for pedestrians for the sidewalk, the guiding principle for any future ordinances concerning sidewalk traffic. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. We'll have to get back to you on the former township ordinance, whether it's still on the books or not. Okay. Adam, I can't see the screen. Are there any other? Oh, there we go. No other hands up? Okay, great. Council, no other? I'm sorry, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Gao's comment that I think his comment is relevant to the future ordinance that Jim was talking about, which will address what's, updating all our ordinances to better reflect how we feel about electric bikes and stuff. And I know we as a council were talking about, yes, they should be, they shouldn't be allowed on the sidewalks, but that's really not a part of tonight's public hearing. So I just wanted to sort of reiterate that for Mr. Gao.
Good. Thank you. Eve and then Michelle.
Yeah, just real quick, again, I'm recalling Jim's map with the red lines, but I assume that, one of the things, again, that we have to develop is infrastructure so that somebody who's riding into town with their children in a little buggy can find a place where they can park that while they then walk around. And the current area, map's still not up, current area that's affected is, relatively small, but does include a pretty extensive, thank you so much, extensive stretch of Nassau Street. So I know that our Bike and Pedestrian Committee and others are working on adequate bike parking. But, that could help address the first comment that was made.
Thank you. Michelle? No? Oh, sorry. Anybody else? Okay. We'll declare the hearing closed and have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 ordinances to introduce. First one is ordinance 2022-40, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regulating public parking spaces for charging of electric vehicles and amending Chapter 19 of the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. Public hearing December 12th, 2022. Is there a motion to introduce that? Thank you, David. Is there a second? Michelle? Okay. Roll call vote, sorry.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-42, an ordinance by the Mayor and Council of Princeton concerning salaries and compensation of certain personnel of the municipality of Princeton. Public hearing December 12th, 2022. Is there a motion? Leticia's got the motion. Mia's got the second. Roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs?
Yes.
Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-43, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton merging the zone maps of the former Borough of Princeton and Township of Princeton into a single map and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968 accordingly. Public hearing December 12th, 2022. Is there a motion? Thank you. Mia's got the motion. Layton's got the second. Roll call vote.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Fraga?
Yes.
Ms. Sachs? Yes. Mr. Newland?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to resolutions. 22417, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing the award of a contract to Waters and Bugby for the purchase and installation of a fire hydrant at 298 River Road in the not-to-exceed amount of $25,790. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Eve's got the second. Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, ayes have it. 22-418, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement to Kyle plus McManus Associates LLC in the not-to-exceed amount of $15,000 for special redevelopment planning services. Michelle's got the motion. Is there a second? Mia's got the second. Questions or comments? Is this for any specific, or this is just a general in case we need it? I'm sorry.
Justin?
There we go.
It's just general in case we need them.
Thank you. I just wanted to make you feel good that you stuck around and we had another question for you. Any other questions or comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Everyone comfortable with what's on the consent agenda? If so, someone could move the consent agenda. David, thank you. Eve's got the second. All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. David, do you have a motion? David.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Eve, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 We're done. Thank you, everybody that attended. Have a great evening. We're done.